Good morning, Carly and Todd. Organizers of today's protest are calling for a pause in economic activity. So that means no work, no school, no shopping, as they demand ICE to stop their operations in Minnesota. The protest comes a day after Vice President J.D. Vance visited Minneapolis, blaming state and local officials for the unrest in the city.
The local authorities have been told, do not cooperate. So these guys are trying to go out and enforce the law. They're trying to arrest sex offenders, but they're trying to do it in an environment where local officials have been told, do not help them, do not provide intelligence about where these sex offenders might be. This is disgraceful. And there are a lot of things that all of us could do better to lower the temperature.
Meantime, acting ICE Director Todd Lyons is giving more details about the 5-year-old boy who was taken into custody by immigration agents. The photo has made the rounds on social media.
The target of this operation was this boy's father. They went to pull the car over, and the father ran. He abandoned that child. So our officers and agents, they stayed behind with that poor 5-year-old who was frightened at the time because his dad just took off and ran. We took both of them into custody. You know, the dad opted to go and be removed with his son. You know, now we're turning it out that ICE is arresting kids at schools, ICE is arresting kids at daycare. This 5-year-old's left out in the cold. Absolutely not.
Onto that protest now that disrupted a church service over the weekend. 3 people have been arrested. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey saying this is a gross abuse of power. The federal government is picking and choosing who to investigate, going after protesters and not the person who shot and killed one of our neighbors. I'm calling for Nikema to be released immediately. Nikema is one of the protesters who was arrested. No charges, though, have been filed against Don Lemon, who maintains that he was at the service as a journalist. Carly and Todd.
Madeleine Rivera, thank you. With that, let us bring in Kendall Qualls, running for governor of Minnesota. And Kendall, we just heard from the mayor, but he doubled down on his defense of these violent protesters in his city. Listen.
What makes Minneapolis different is that we have an influx of 3,000 federal agents on our street, and we're not the size of New York City or Los Angeles. What makes us different is we're seeing constitutional violations play out in real time. What makes us different is, yes, we do have residents that are beautifully standing up, supporting their neighbors.
He refers to it as beautifully standing up, but protesting in a church is unequivocally illegal. Literally, the law says you can't do that. Impeding ICE, unequivocally illegal. The law says you absolutely cannot do that. And yet you have these leaders like Jacob Frey, like Tim Walz, continuing to encourage people to commit illegal acts like this. Should they be charged with a crime, Kendall?
Well, they should absolutely be charged. Obviously, they went in that church. Not only is it illegal, it's disgusting. And I call them cowards on a social media post because they never would have done something like that in a Muslim mosque. They targeted a Christian community. They've been targeting Christians in the state for the last 8 years, ever since COVID. That you can keep your casino open, but not your church. They sued basically Bible universities here, Christian universities, telling them that the students, any student that have to sign a pledge of faith, they wanted to sue them. That we had to take them to court on that issue. So the mayor mentioned that what makes them different here in Minnesota isn't any of the things he talked about. What makes us different is that we have 2 incompetent leaders leading this state with a resistance movement.
Hey, Kendall, what do you think about this day of protest that's going to be taking place across your state today? That's the goal, and also to not go to school or not show up to work. Does that benefit anybody in your state?
Well, it benefits the socialists and Marxists that are leading the state. That's the only people it benefits, but it also does this. It distracts Minnesotans away from the $9 billion that we know of fraud. All of this is a distraction away from all of the mismanagement, the frauding, and the abuse of what this state has been through in the last few years under Tim Walz and Mayor Frey. Got to remember, these are the same men that allowed Minneapolis become a war zone for 4 days in 2020, and it's been going on now for far too long. We're ready to make a change. That's why I'm running. We needed an outsider from outsider politics to help clean up St. Paul Capitol.
Yeah, notice we're not talking about it anymore. That's likely by design. Before we let you go, I want to get your thoughts on this. House Oversight Committee now investigating how Ilhan Omar's family's net worth grew $30 million in 1 year, mainly through her husband's financial firm. Let's look at the finances here. In 2019, she entered Congress with a reported negative net worth. Then there was a reported change in household net worth from $42.44 up to $25 million from 2022 to 2023, all tied to her husband's political consulting firm, Rose Lake Capital, which does a lot of business with Democrat-aligned organizations. Do you find this surge in wealth to be out of the ordinary, Kendall?
Well, we have a state representative that basically has said that they've run this state like the mafia. They're giving the Italian mafia a bad name based on what they've done in our state in Minnesota. Literally, I think she's only been in office 8 years. What a transformation. She's a refugee from another country. We saved her and her family's life, and she has the most ingratitude toward this country while reaping a $30 million net worth, having done nothing in the private sector.
Understood. Okay, Minnesota gubernatorial candidate Kendall Qualls, we thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.